All right, let's talk about a word you think you know, spirit. We're about to take it apart and put it back together in a totally new way. But this has nothing to do with faith or belief. This is more like an engineering problem. We're going to look at spirit as a fundamental structure of how we even exist. So let's just start with this bombshell right here. This one sentence basically asks you to wipe the slate clean, to forget everything you thought you knew about what spirituality is supposed to mean. And that's the big question, right? If you just pull belief right out of the equation, what's even left? Well, that empty space is exactly where we're going to build our new understanding. Okay, so here we go. We're building a new definition. And the first step is a really huge mental shift. We need to stop thinking about spirit as a thing, a substance, and start seeing it as a function. Yeah, this right here is the absolute heart of it. Forget the idea of spirit as some mystical substance you carry around. Start thinking of it as a verb. It's not something you have, it's something you do. Okay, so if spirit is an action, something you do, then what exactly is that action? It's expression. That's the central pillar of this whole framework. At its most basic level, spirit is an act of communication. Let's get more specific. What are we talking about here? Spirit is how you express your relationship to, well, everything. It's how you position yourself in relation to reality. You can think of yourself as a kind of radio tower, constantly broadcasting a signal that says, here's where I stand. This chart really lays it out. The old model, spirit is some kind of supernatural stuff that you possess. The new model, it's a basic function of existence, something you do. We're essentially swapping out one entire Mac of reality for another. You know, it's also really important to get what this definition isn't. It's not about believing in God or practicing specific rituals. Those things are systems that are built on top of spirit. But spirit itself is that more fundamental act of expression that comes before all of that. So why does all this matter? What's the point of redefining this word? Well, because when you see spirit as simple expression, the whole framework suddenly becomes radically inclusive. Let's see how. I mean, just think about it. Whether you affirm reality, deny it, question it, or even just stay totally silent about it, you're still taking a stance. You're expressing a position. In this game, there are no sidelines. You can't not participate. This table just makes it so clear. A theist affirms. An agnostic suspends judgment. An atheist negates. The conclusions are total opposites, right? But look at the structure. They are all performing the exact same type of action, a communicative act that signals their position. And this, well, this is probably the most provocative takeaway from the whole thing. Under this structural definition, atheism isn't a lack of spirit. It's a powerful spiritual expression. The act of saying no is just as much a way of positioning yourself toward reality as the act of saying yes. This is another really crucial distinction to make. Spirituality is that raw, fundamental act of expression. Religion, well, religion is what happens when you organize that expression into a shared system with rules and stories and rituals. You could say spirituality is the verb, and religion is the detailed grammar that goes with it. All right, now we're ready to go one level deeper. So far, we've talked about spirit as an expression of our being in the world. But what role does it play in how we come to know the world in the first place? Okay, so let's quickly break down two big ideas. Ontology asks, what is? What stuff exists in reality? From that point of view, spirit is just another one of those things. But metaphysics asks, how do we know what exists? And from that angle, spirit isn't a piece of furniture in the room. It's the very light that lets us see the furniture. This bridge metaphor is just perfect. Spirit is the interface that connects the world out there with our knowledge of it in here. It's like the operating system we use to process reality itself. Now, you might hear a word like interface and think this all sounds very modern, very technical. But what's fascinating is that this idea has incredibly deep roots in our most ancient human experiences. Seriously, this isn't just some abstract theory. If you look at the origins of the word spirit, you find it's always been anchored in real, tangible, sensory stuff. Think about what all these things have in common. Breath, wind, scent. You can't see them, but you can absolutely feel their effects. They're all channels of information. They transmit presence and meaning without being solid objects. They are essentially our original interfaces with reality. So, the argument here is that when our ancestors talked about spirit in these ways, they weren't being primitive. They were actually being incredibly sophisticated, using a functional term for the channels through which the world becomes knowable to us. And that brings us to our final, grand definition that ties everything we've talked about together. Spirit is the communicative process through which being becomes knowable. It's how raw existence gets translated into human understanding. So let's sum it all up. We've redefined spirit from a noun to a verb. It's not something you possess, it's not a creed you believe in. It is the fundamental act of expression that literally connects you to reality and allows you to make sense of it all. And that leaves us with a final, fascinating question. If affirmation and negation are just two different modes of the very same spiritual act, what does that do to the rigid wall we've built between the believer and the non-believer? Something to think about.